Thank you, opening bell. Welcome to the program. I'm Temple Ashaju. Joining us on the show today, we've got Bosun Amofaya, Executive Editor at Frontier Africa Reports, and Joshua Odebisi from Vetiva Capital Management. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program this morning. Let's
Good
check in with
morning.
the market. How did they close yesterday? Nigeria positive 0.33% on Monday. BRVM 1.25% on Monday. The Egyptian Stock Exchange was negative, mildly down 0.03%. And of course, the Nairobi Stock Exchange also slipped by some 11 basis points, while the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in South Africa jumped by 2.12%. The eastern part of Africa, let's look at the headlines. Kenya's February inflation was up 5.78% versus 5.69% in January. And of course, Britam Insurance Holdings starts restructuring to cut some roles. Genghis issues long-term buy rating on EABL, that's East African Breweries Limited, and of course, that's based on the financial recovery status. While Rwandan weekly coffee exports hit some 431,000 plus in terms of kilogram at 1.38 million, $1.38 million. Somalia Central Bank issues a first mobile money license to Hormuz Telecom. Bosun, let's get you to deal with these headlines from the eastern part of Africa, please.
I'll start with, thank you, Temple. I think I'll start with the coffee story from Rwanda. These guys are making extremely great stride. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, we touched on the same story. Their weekly export was just around 800,000 US dollars. Last week, they hit 1.8 million US dollars. And that tells you that so much we can do if we diversify in Nigeria and if we diversify even agriculture itself beyond everybody just doing cassava, or everybody just doing rice, everybody's just doing cocoyam, everybody's doing yam exports. If we diversify the agriculture itself, not just diversify into agriculture, but diversify the agri sector itself in Nigeria, there's a whole lot more that we can make from there. $1.8 million, if you hand that over to the central bank, I'm sure Godwin Emefiele will be happy that you're helping him with his FX position right now. So from coffee exports alone, by the way, when you unpack that story, Nigeria is one of the destinations that Rwanda's coffee was exported to. In other words, we have spent our crude oil earnings to import coffee from Rwanda. And that's quite instructive to me. So what are we exporting to Rwanda today? I don't think I have any idea if there's anything that we export to Rwanda that is of any game changer. So we need to look at that. East African Breweries, Genghis Capital is like Vetiva Capital, by the way, one of the big investment securities trading firm in Kenya. And they give a long-term buy. The BAPL is a long-term buy. I know everybody will sympathize with East African breweries because of the lockdown and because alcohol production, staff, and a few issues. But on a long-term basis, it's like, I'm sure Vetiva Capital will give a long-term buy to Nigerian breweries, for example, any day, anytime, even if their last earnings was not as superlative as it would expect it to be. So that is taken as given. I love the stride being made in Somalia with the issue of a mobile money license. I think we'll see a whole lot more in Africa. I am happy that across Frontier Africa, we're making some inroads, despite the Al-Shabaab crisis in Somalia, despite the insurgency, despite the whole problem, politically speaking, and what have you. The financial services industry always have to find a way. They have a very small stock exchange in Somalia, by the way, which is headed by one managing director, a very fine gentleman, I forgot his name now, built on some contacts some months ago. And you'll be surprised how countries like Somalia is making money. Now they're looking at Ethiopia, which is not far from them. With Ethiopia doing its own licensing rounds for telecom, introducing their own mobile money, electronic wallet, the Somalian authorities are also saying, hold on a second, change is coming and it's blowing across the Horn of Africa. We better be part of it. They see what Safaricom is doing in Kenya, how much just one single company in Kenya can be a whole game changer. And I think that is something they are also tapping into in Somalia. Congratulations to them.
Thank you so much, Bosun. Across the Western African market, now we'll start with Nigeria, where MTN Nigeria is ramping up its renewal of its operational license, spectrum license, which is due in September. We understand that the Nigerian Communications Commission, the regulatory agency there has given a nods to that. Surplus strong cash, $258 million, despite $100 million RCFK repayment. Dangote Sugar's revenue was up to 214.2 billion naira. Eternal Oil forecast some 38.8 billion naira in revenue. US sets window on America Youth Tech Center in Lagos. While Senegalese mobile phone operators, Expresso, getting some 4G licensing going forward. Let me come to you quickly, Joshua, for some of these headlines, especially the corporate headlines that we have coming out of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Well, I think first of all, the renewal of MTN's license. I think just to speak on that briefly, nobody would be surprised that MTN, this is the second largest market, I think, outside of South Africa. So um, there's no surprise that they would want to not just renew their license, but they've made significant investments in Nigeria. They are listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The truth is that that market, this market rather, is is extremely vital for their operations. Now, I don't expect there to be any hitches with regards to the renewal. Um, Obviously there have been one or two controversies. I mean, especially maybe late 2019 or early 2020, we saw some of the fines from the CBN with regards to their movement of dollars and things like that. But I think they are more than happy to put up with these things because of how profitable our market is for various reasons. And so, we see them expanding their 4G network. We see them, really making strides to cover as much of Nigeria as possible in order to ensure that they are making, significant revenue across that market. So obviously, that is to be expected. So by September, they'll definitely renew their license, and that's also cool cash for the Nigerian government, because I know those licenses are not cheap. Um, Seplat, I think what I'll say about them is I'm very surprised that they're even paying out any dividend at all to their shareholders, just due to the fact that they made a pretty significant loss in the year 2020. So I mean, obviously on the back of all the struggles with oil prices and operations and things like that. But overall, I think just due to the fact that the Nigerian market is very geared towards um, dividends and dividend payouts. I think they've decided that okay, we have enough excess cash that we can, go tap into that and pay out, a 5 cent dividend, just to keep investors happy and to ensure that they don't, sell our stock down too much. I think that is really what you are looking at there, because, like I said, the overarching sentiment in Nigeria is geared towards dividend payouts, not really, share price, share price improvements, really that much. So I think that's really where that is coming from. So I guess the fact that they have enough cash to do so, it really speaks to that. Now, Dangote Sugar, overall, I think their performance wasn't terrible, wasn't too great, but I mean 29.7 billion um, in PAT during the pandemic. The truth is that overall their markets, they had a few challenges that they had to sort through, but I think they came out of it relatively okay, would I say. Um, I mean, if you look at their previous years' performance, they were up by about 53%, across their revenue and their PAT, and they recommended a dividend of 1.50 kobo per share, which is up from full year 19 of 1 10 kobo per share. So I think that's very very good. Although their finance costs were a little bit higher, they had about 1.2 billion in finance costs, but their EBIT was up by about 48% year on year. So the pandemic didn't really affect them too badly, let's say, because they were still able to improve um, their profits overall. But I think that would also have had to do with the fact that throughout 2020 the borders were closed, so people weren't really bringing in sugar from neighboring countries. But now that those borders have been reopened, we'll see whether or not, that will translate into any kind of effect on their business, whether people bring in, cheaper sugar and that will, affect their margins and their sales. But overall, 2020 was still a good year for them and for their shareholders.
Right, that's really good to know. Bosun, you have any comments to add?
Yeah, I just love the story about the MTN license renewal, which is going to happen in August, because the current licenses are due 10-year renewal. Airtel did the same renewal, remember, just I think last month, and I think they paid something around $200 million or something like that to the NCC. That goes straight to the Federation account. I'm sure MTN own will be much more than that. So in terms of, because it's much bigger, just as Joshua rightly pointed out. So anything $250 million to the coffers of the government right now is free money, in a manner of speaking. It comes without any strings attached. So just sell. It's like selling airtime to MTN and say, you go market it and make your money out of it. That's what Spectrum is all about, by the way. It's just a function of selling airtime. So it's free money, and government, I think the central bank, the federal government, can use that extra $200 million that they don't really sweat for, in a manner of speaking, quote and unquote. So that's good news. As far as the earnings are concerned, I think pushing through with MTN and Seplat, they're able to, I think it's good news that we're able to pay down a bit on their debts as well, which is giving them a bit of a better horizon moving forward. The market is taking that a little bit, looking cautiously on that. We didn't see much reaction yet on the Eternal Oil, which is a smaller oil retailer in terms of business. A&P is what Seplat is. Downstream a player is what Eternal Oil is. But one good thing about this company is the fact that it's very consistent with releasing its numbers and also giving forecasts. And I think I'll give that to that company, Eternal Oil PLC. Thank you.
Thanks a great deal, Bosun. I mean, it's good to know that now we don't have to go through the whole discussion of bring MTN to be listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, bring Airtel, get them listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, maybe when they want to renew their license. That has been consummated already. Perhaps Glow is the next company to bring on board now, and maybe the next one, the other Etisalat or Nine Mobile. Yeah, good to know. So let's move on to the Southern African space, where South Africa's APSA PMI leaps by some 53 or leads to 53 reading from 50.9 in January. That was highly supported by some other key factors there. Hype-up investment cuts debt by 942 million rands. Loan to value ratio is now at 38.8% as of December 2020. We also know that the best half-year trading profit is up by 3.5%. Fitch cuts Transnet SOC Limited to BB minus, and of course Capricorn Group half-year profits continues to move on. It's now at $469 million. Basically, Bosun, let me come to you with this headlines here. You've got the PMI story for South Africa. How does this speak to the recovery in the economic growth of that country?
South Africa is the big boy. Anytime you talk about Southern Africa and the rest of Africa, by the way, give it to them. But again, that small story from Capricorn Company in Namibia, and that figure about the Namibian dollar, it shows that, look, we got our footprints across the African continent. We got everybody on board. We're talking about big companies like MTN, like Nigerian breweries, like East African breweries. They will talk about companies like iProperty Investments in South Africa, which is like our own UPDC in Nigerian market in terms of real estate. They had a Bidvest. So the whole Q4 full year 2020 earnings are just coming through across all the markets. So folks will need to see more of this. But that APSA PMI was quite interesting to the extent that you're moving from around 51 reading to 53. And I think this speaks to the level of lockdown easing that South Africa did between December and early January. 2 days ago, President Ramaphosa spoke to the new level of making sure that now you can consume alcohol, then some folks can go to bed, the number of people who can be together at certain locations, for example, It's now for public events like weddings or whatever, it's now about 200, 250. If you're meeting indoors, maybe about 50 to 100. Then the whole business confidence is still not so big. But one good story that I picked up yesterday evening in an interview with the executive chairman of Impact Investment in Johannesburg, Chris Hart, was the fact that South Africa is running into one big problem, and that is the economy is moving away, which is Nigerian problem right now, from being an investment destination to a consumption economy. Now, that struck me yesterday when he made that phrase, because even though he didn't speak to Nigeria, but I know that one problem Nigeria has right now is that we become highly consumptive, but very low in terms of investment, whether direct or domestic. And I'm sure Joshua can speak to this. The level of investments in South Africa is waning, and the economy is becoming more consumptive. And you're going to run into a critical problem not too long from now if you allow that to happen. And that is what Egypt is changing. Egypt once is doing everything left, right, and center, including Morocco, to make sure that the level of inflows of investment, if domestic or whatever, far outweighs the level of consumption. And I think it's simple economics and simple mathematics or simple business sense. And I think that's one thing South Africa needs to look into. So we hope that this PMI number now at 53 or whatever is now roaring, and they'll be able to move on. I'm sure Joshua would touch on that as well when you look at investment versus consumption.
Absolutely. But Joshua, you want to have a go with that as well?
What I would say is that, like Boss mentioned already, the truth is that the level of FPI and FDI has been, fairly weak for a while now. Obviously, just due to the fact that foreign investors, and this is all down to our dollar liquidity. Foreign investors are not confident of being able to repatriate their gains on any kind of investments that they make, just due to the fact that a lot of investors are still locked into Nigeria, months after they've been trying to exit their positions, just because the CBN is trying to manage its dollar liquidity. And that is the thing. That is the reason why Egypt doesn't have that issue, and why they're attracting so much investment is that they don't have that problem, because they are basically liberalize that market, and they allow their currency to essentially float. And once you do that, obviously Nigeria is very, very scared to do so, because they know that the true value of our currency is closer to the black market value currently, and might go a little bit higher just at the start. Now, after that, though, the thing is, we have to remember that will just be temporary, and if we are able to, like Bossing said, attract investment, then the supply will sort of, match demand, and we would find an equilibrium. If we were able to, become a net exporter, then we will start to maybe see some improvements in naira demand, and then we might even start to see, an appreciation of our value. But unfortunately, that is not the only factor that affects exchange rate. We also have to, look at inflation, and our inflation is extremely high, and it has always been high. And unfortunately, the chances are that it will remain high just due to the fact that it has always been high. It's a psychological effect on inflation that is not just economic. It's not just because things are expensive, inflation will continue to go up, but because people think that things are going to continue to get more expensive, so they price that into their products, and that raises prices continuously. And unfortunately, if we continue to have such a huge disparity between our level of inflation and the dollar's level of inflation, then the overall value of our currency will depreciate automatically against the dollar. So those are the two factors that we're fighting against. But the truth is that the CBN cannot control either of those factors at the moment. And I think that the easiest one to let go of would be the just to float the currency. Now, obviously, I don't think that this current CBN governor will ever do that. I think they will continue to, massage rates slowly upwards, in perpetuity until, somebody more sensible comes in. But, for now, I think we're just going to have to deal with the fact that we're not attracting investors based on the fact that they are looking at our currency and saying, this is not the real value. If I come in at this rate, I can't get my money out afterwards. There's no point. that's unfortunately where we are.
Right, and thank you so much, Joshua. Let's finish off now with the Northern African headlines that we've got on our front. We've got the Commercial International Bank of Egypt recording profits of 10.2 billion Egyptian pounds in 2020. Auto Group Holdings is changing its name. You have another company, Tunisian Reinsurance Company, also changing its name. Credit du Maroc. It's got its NBI slipping by 0.9% to 2.38 billion dirhams in 2020. Arabian Cement reporting loss of 122.7 million Egyptian pounds in 2020. Quite a number of corporate stories here. Every time I look at the headlines from Northern Africa, it just speaks massively to investment. Awesome. You're the man to come to with this.
Yes, investments and a whole lot more around. I think we're still in the corporate reporting season, by the way, as I said earlier, across the various jurisdictions on the continent. So across Frontier Africa, whether it's Commercial International Bank of Egypt or those who are doing changing of name in insurance, there's a whole lot of consolidation going on across the North African corridor as well, across within countries and across borders as well. And we continue to see this play out across some of these earnings. But again, the 2020 reporting period, which is now coming on stream, will begin to reveal across the various jurisdictions the impact of 2020 coronavirus pandemic within each economies, as it were. So in some countries, you'll see a bit of stable reporting numbers for the banks, which are usually the frontliners in every economy, even the United States. You can't take it away from the banks being the big names in reporting, whether they're investment banks or commercial banks on one hand. Some other, you look at insurance, then you look at cement sector, for example. For example, you look at one in East and North Africa. Yes, it may not be as profitable as Nigeria in terms of the cement because of demand within the 2020 period. So I think we're going to see a whole lot more of this news coming through sometime until later this month.
Sure, thanks a great deal. Thank you very much, Bosun Amofai, Executive Editor at Frontier Africa Reports, for your perspectives on these headlines this morning. I appreciate them. Joshua, Deputy Banking Analyst with Vetiva Capital Management, thanks a great deal for being on the show and for giving us your perspectives as well. This has been Frontier Opening Bell for this Tuesday. I'm Temple Ashaju. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.